Well, hello, beautiful ones. It's Stacey here, the head vixen of the Vixen Academy, and I want to welcome you to this explosive podcast that I have. If this is your first time with me, I invite you to learn a little bit more about me and my sassy work by going to thevixenacademy.com. So I want to just jump right into things. Okay. With my community, I kind of alluded to I was going to record this special podcast because it was definitely mind blowing. Since my dad's passing, I've had some just massive epiphanies about so many different things. But what I experienced at his memorial service, at his funeral, was nothing like I've ever experienced in my life. And so this has definitely brought up a lot of learning, a lot of healing, and lessons I would love to share with you. And you know how I roll. Make sure you have like a piece of paper and pen to jot down, inspirations and insight that you may receive from what I call musing from Stacey, what I share with you. And it was just so big, I had to break this down in parts. Otherwise, this may be a podcast that would go, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or something like that. So, my dad was dealing with a lot of emotional pain, and it was pain that he never healed. So if you're ever wondering, I mean, all of you have heard the phrase pay it forward in terms of paying forward your gratitude, paying forward appreciation, so that you can pay for that positivity in life, right? Because definitely in this world, we can use a whole lot more of that. But there is another side of paying it forward that so many people don't talk about, yet millions and millions of people deal with all the time. And what most people are doing, some knowingly, but most unconsciously, is they're paying forward their pain. That's what they're paying forward. Not love and positivity, but they're paying forward their pain. And if you've ever wondered, paying forward the pain can do not only to yourself, but to your children and every single relationship you touch. Well, let me tell you what can exactly happen. And this is so explosive. Like I said, I'm breaking these down in parts, but let me just kind of hop on into it. Where at my dad's memorial service, at my dad's funeral, a brawl almost broke out. Seriously, a fight almost broke out at the memorial service because one of the siblings, who I now call the Grim Reaper, chose that moment to air her grievances about our dad and his widow from the church pulpit, right in front of everybody in the audience, as well as everybody else watching on live stream across various parts of the world. All right. So when I was just like, I know this is not happening, but it was happening in front of me. I was just like, I don't know what to do or say about this, but I will tell you what happened and I will tell you what I did. Okay. So, it was a beautiful memorial service for, I would say, 91% of the time. It was a beautiful memorial service. Um, things that were said about my dad that were, very glowing, very beautiful. But then there was also acknowledgement about, his frailties in terms of how he treated his children and certain people in his life, and how he expressed those mistakes to, clergy and things of that nature. So to me, it was a very balanced memorial service that would honor all the people that were there. Okay. So as my dad was cremated, and I was there when we were setting up things for his memorial service. And that was the other thing that kind of surprised me. This man has 6 children, yet I was the only one that was doing anything to prepare for his memorial service. And that really surprised me because I was expecting the two that he raised, that they would be there front and center, but that was not the case. So that was something when I got there, I had to like, okay, this is kind of weird. And so I had to literally almost step in as representation for my dad's side of the family. And my stepmom and her family, they were amazing, just totally amazing people. So we were doing all these preparations, his urn. There were also some little mini urns that we had for myself and other members of the family. So we were talking about, okay, how all that go. All right. So all that was pre-organized or organized ahead of time. So when the memorial service was just over and they were starting the procession out, one of the fathers called me up to the front so we can go in the back and take care of, with my dad's ashes and his urn. And at the same moment, this problem child, what we, in the family sibling, she also gets up and she starts walking up to the pulpit of the church. And everybody was like, what is going on? Now, I had already made arrangements with the father of, okay, we got to do this after service concludes. So I already had my job I needed to do. I got my dad's urn. I had the other urns. I went to the back. And all of a sudden, I started hearing her bashing our dad and then all of a sudden, I heard people screaming and yelling. I was in the back with my dad's urn, and the two priests were back there. And I said to them, somebody needs to turn the mic off, grab the microphone out her hand, get her off the pulpit, because this is not the place or time. And I said, this is typical of her behavior. Typical of her behavior. And so I find it very ironic how I was the only family member that did not witness everything because I was in the back. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm glad that my dad's ashes weren't there as well because of what I heard, the skirmish that was going on. It may have gotten knocked over and his ashes would have went all over the floor. And then we would have had to get a vacuum to vacuum up my dad off of the church floor. I mean, it was just some crazy crap. And so what happened was, in all of this going on, I said to myself, isn't this interesting? Because one of the things that was a frailty of my dad is he can be not only very funny with his mouth, but he can also be very wicked with his mouth and some of the things that he said to people, especially his children. So whoever came up with that phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, that's a load of crap. Because I will tell you this, more fights, wars, and killings have happened over what people have said. And so whoever did that whole saying was full of crap. And so what happens is I was thinking, karma is a bitch. It would happen to be the one sibling who's the problem child created drama with her own wicked mouth against our own dad. And so right there, I thought of, isn't that interesting? Because, my dad liked a little bit of drama in his life. And so he sure as heck went out with a little drama as well. Now, I can sit here and be a little bit more relaxed, even though I'm a little excited in my voice around what happened, because trust me, I was pissed around all of this. And that was probably the very reason I was not out there in the middle of everything, because I may be little and 5'1", and this particular sibling is probably like 5'10", but I could not care how tall she was. That shenanigans that she was doing, I would have made sure it was stopped before it went any further. And so, but I said, I am here in the back for a reason. And my dad's ashes are not out there in the middle of all that commotion for a reason. So I stayed focused on what I was doing versus stopping what I was doing to interject myself to what was going on out in on the church pulpit. And I want you to think about that. How many times have you run into an explosive situation, right? Where really it doesn't have anything, or you're not directly involved in it, and you know other people are taking care of the situation. And even with all that, you will still drop what you're doing and you will interject yourself into the drama. And I will tell you, that is a form of self sabotage. Believe it or not, it is a form of self sabotage. And listen to me clearly, this is different than defending someone that needs help. Now, because there are two totally different things. If someone is doing something to someone else and you have the ability and the voice to help out someone that is in danger or having a problem and no one else is there to help them, then yes, you can interject yourself into that situation. But when you're in a different situation where there is a commotion and there are other people who are capable of handling that situation, you don't need to interject yourself into that situation, because that is just a distraction from what it is that you need to focus on within yourself. And what happened here at the memorial service, the funeral, that is, like I said, a very explosive and dramatic situation. But think about that in your own life. And it could be little things, as little as even an email. You're in the middle of doing something that's extremely important or supposed to be important, but then you get an email or call, oh my God, something is going on, and blah, 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 blah. A friend that's always calling you with some kind of drama. And you stop what you're doing so you can deal with their situation. I'm talking about even like that. It's the same deal of what I was talking about, but my example is just a little bit more explosive. But the behavior, the underlying sabotage is exactly the same. So I said to myself when I was in the back, why would I go out there and increase my blood pressure more than it already is? I need to stay focused on what I am doing here. So one of the priests stayed in the back with me. The other priest went out by the pulpit to dissolve what was going on out there. And I stayed focused on what the true purpose was. And I was able to get my father's ashes in these other urns. The father was able to bless all of the other urns and stuff like that. And I was glad that it wasn't in the middle of all of that energy. And so I wanted to share that with you because I also wanted you to see, what did I do in that situation? Now, when we left the back of the, I guess, rectory or office that was behind the pulpit, everybody was cleared out of the church, but I saw the troublemakers, which I call the Three Stooges now, were standing outside, and I held onto my dad's urn and all the urns, and I ended up having to be, check this out, I ended up having to be almost like bodyguard for my dad's urns. And I could not put it down. And the sucker was at least 60 pounds. I could not put down my dad's urn because people were afraid that either they would try to swipe it or they would try to knock it over. Who knows? So here I am being bodyguard to my dad's ashes, holding it. And after I went into the reception room, where everybody was gathering, it was catered and everything after the service, they literally locked the door behind me so that they would not come into the reception, because the Grim Reaper, she tried to come in and she was blocked. And they were told that they had to leave. And if she did not leave, they would call the police. Yes. So, woo, Lord have mercy. I can tell this story with a little bit of humor in my voice, because when you kind of come to think about it, it was truly a Jerry Springer moment. If you remember that tabloid talk show that used to be on popular in the 90s, and they would have on, these family members or somebody with this, mistress, and that would all of a sudden come out on stage and they would start brawling on the stage. Oh my Lord, it was like a Jerry Springer moment. All that was missing was some popcorn, right? But whew, they left. And after they left, I was able to finally put down that urn on the table. And then after people settled down, after 10 minutes, it took about 10, 15 minutes for people's emotions and everything to settle down. After that, we had a kick butt time. We had such a fun time over the next 3 days, celebrating my dad's transition. But what happens is this whole drama inducing experience, this is an epic example of what paying forward your pain can do. Because the grim reaper, the problem child, she seemed to encapsulate all of the worst qualities of my dad, and it came out in spectacular view during his funeral, right? During his send off and good, with his goodbye. And so that is what paying forward your pain can do. So if you can hear, I really wish you can truly, truly hear in my voice and from the depth of my heart. It's like, please, stop making your kids or your partner or your parents even the excuse for not getting the help that you need to improve your mind and your life and resolve the pain that you are going through. Because if you want to save yourself, if you want to save your relationships, your marriage, and your kids from the pain, it is important for you to save yourself first. I tell this to everybody. When you get on a plane, what is the first thing that they tell you in the safety instructions? If you are responsible for other people, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And why do they tell you to do that? It's because if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first and you try to focus on other people first, you will pass out and you will kill both of you. So you won't save anybody by being a martyr. It doesn't save anyone. That is just the victim mentality going awry. That is all that is. And yes, there is a lot of pain that is going around in this world, but it doesn't need to be that way. And it starts with one person at a time. We can't solve the world's problems if we don't solve our own problems first. And listen to that. You can't help other people solve their problems if you can't solve your problems first. Because all you're doing is paying forward the pain to every single person that you come in contact with. And I've heard every excuse in the book, people. Trust me. And if you're wondering what that sounds like, here's what that sounds like. Okay, this is what I've heard. I have to pay for my kids' braces. That is a big one I hear a lot about. Okay. I have to pay for my kids' extracurricular activities. Oh, we're planning on going on a vacation, so the money is going there first. Oh, we're remodeling their house. Oh, I have to take this business development program. Those are all, yes. And those are excuses, people. Trust me, they are excuses. And I'm being very forward, very straight. But if you want to be a little bit more spiritual and esoteric about it, you can go ahead and read Wayne Dyer's book called Excuses Gone. He puts it in a little bit more delicate way if you want to go that route. But I'm just getting right to the point. And so if you're not willing to save yourself first, so the toxic behavior and emotions don't get passed down as a continuing family value, then you know what? Stop complaining about your life. Just stop complaining about your life. Because if you're not willing to change it, there's an aspect of you that feels vindicated and carrying on the victim mentality. and being that martyr. So call a spade, right? So for those of you, though, who these words are landing on, and you do want to do something about this, because I would use stronger words, but I don't want this to be all bleeped out, right? And you rather not pay for the pain, then one of the biggest things is I want you to look at what are the repeating patterns that are going on in your life, in all of your relationships. The relationship with yourself. Do you exist in chronic self-doubt? Do you exist in chronic complaining? Do you exist in feeling like you have a black cloud that is over your head? All right. Now, your relationships in your romantic, your intimate relationships, do you have the same pattern that keeps coming around? It could be different partners, but it's the same issue, like resurrected in different people. Well, guess who's the common denominator in all those relationships? You are, not them, you. So, what is that pattern that you keep running into? Are you ready to heal and solve that? What about your relationships in your family? Because here's one of the things I learned in kind of witnessing all of this. Now, I'm not close to the Murphy side of the family, which is one of the reasons I was shocked how I happened to be the one to represent my dad. Okay. That's a story for another day. I'll get to that in another podcast. But what happens is, I'm not close to that side of the family. And one of the things when I witnessed all this, I realized that the family that we're born into they are our teachers and the lessons and the healing that we have to do on this earthly plane. Because that's one of the reasons why we are here. Some people go, oh, why are we here on this earth? Well, that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to heal the soul's pain so that it can be free and live a happy existence in which it's truly intended to live. But what happens is the family that we're born into, they are the catalyst and the trigger to help us heal the pain and the story. And the family that we choose, they are the family that is there to support us, encourage us. Now, yes, the family that we're born into, depending on what it is that we have to heal, yes, they can be cheerleaders and support. That's what I definitely get on my mom's side of the family. That's the side of the family I do identify with. But that is not the story on my dad's side of the family. And so I can't ignore the lessons that they're teaching me as well. So I also want you to look at those relationships and that pattern. What is it telling you that you need to heal? And then the same goes with your professional business relationships as well. What are those chronic problems that have caused you angst? Because those are also messages of what you are to heal. So if anything, I hope this explosive story that I just shared with you about what happened at my dad's funeral can be somewhat of a wake-up call of what, when you pay forward your pain, this is what it could do. Screw up some of your children, why they would even have the gall to do that during your funeral, on your last words, your send-off to the world, something as shenanigans like that. And so we always say, hey, when you die or make your transition, what is it that you want to have written on your tombstone? Well, you know what? This would be a great time for us to really take a moment and think about that. Because I know if my dad took the moment to think about that, I am sure the Grim Reaper who felt justified going on a church pulpit to do explosive behavior, I'm sure that is not what he would have written on his tombstone. or in his obituary and stuff. So I invite you to really honestly think about it. And this is not a joke. This is truly real, because the story I just told you was truly real, of a possibility of what can happen. And so I have more awareness around my dad's pain, around my dad's suffering. And instead of blaming him, I really can feel and have compassion for him. And what I've learned since then from him is what I'm going to share with you on subsequent podcasts that are coming up. Because these are beautiful lessons and words. And I shake my head. But this is the second funeral I've been to for a very important person in my life. And both funerals have a doozy of a story. The first one, though, was funny. This one, in the moment, was not funny. If I were to recollect this, maybe a year from now, be telling this story, I'll be laughing my butt off. But at the moment, it wasn't funny, okay? But I know when I make my transition from the world, something like that will not be happening. And everybody, with that, whew, I hope you took some good notes. We are complete for this one, and namaste.